Chimeir is a distant planet. It is defined by waves of life brought from Earth and set free to evolve independently in this new context. The indigenous life of the planet, swarms of microbes called magic by the people who live there, are what harvest Earth organisms and make copies on Chimeir. As the asteroid which concluded the Mesozoic never struck Chimeir, dinosaurs remain the dominant terrestrial megafauna. "7,000 years ago, the Age of Demons came to violent conclusion. The formidable greater demons who had terrorized the known world for thousands of years were slain or driven off the map of the known world. In their place, the peoples of Chimeir established new nations. Through terror, the Age of Demons was surprisingly peaceful. This cannot be said of the Age of Witches. Witch and shapeshifter families battled one another for territory in the ruins left by the demons and their drones in the aftermath of a terrible plague. Though the Witch Kings had considerable power, they were far less potent than the greater demons, and their subjects had just gained long lives. With this far more narrow gulf between lord and subject, it wasn't long before the conflict wasn't just between the witches. Many factions and families of commoners fought against the Witch Kings. However, for the most part, the leading families and major players were all witches with considerable magic at their disposal. In modern Chimeir, witches and shapeshifters are rare. In some cultures they are revered as mighty defenders and wise leaders. To others, they are feared or outright hated. In many cases, this prejudice or reverence both trace their origins to this era, the Age of Witches. Shapeshifter and witch lineages were long-standing, allegedly tracing back through matrilines to the first children, or perhaps even earlier in some cases. But this period of time was defined by powerful beings with tremendous influence over the common folk. In some instances, this influence was supernatural. Mind control spells were especially notorious. Necromancers could allegedly command entire armies of the dead both for labor and keeping their subjects disciplined. And the most powerful of familiars were homunculus demons themselves in all but name. Though the greater demons were initially repelled, many that had fled the initial conflict at their collapse of their age returned to the known world and attacked the new occupants of their home. These demons were in many cases impossible to kill without magic, further cementing the reign of the Witch Kings, as only their curses and exorcisms could defeat these monsters carving their way through the countryside. Among the most famous of these was Olikidyu, a demon that once ruled a massive territory in lowland Picardia, who fled to the highlands when the Age of Demons ended, and now marauded through the new settlements of his old home. According to Picardian folklore, he fed on hundreds, if not thousands, of people. A witch, from one of the clan leaders, made a pact with the great spirits of Picardia, letting the trickster Indrakai occupy her body. Their magics combined facilitated the defeat of Olikidyu, and the Picardians were able to destroy his body, or drive him from Picardia, depending on which version of the story you are told. Khajar is where the majority of great demons and their subjects resided, so naturally faced many demons trying to reclaim the land that, according to Khajarith folklore, rejected them. It is said that the soil itself was consecrated for the Khajarith as the land's chosen people, and only the mightiest of demons could set foot on the peninsula without being destroyed. These mighty demons still made their efforts, and while they could not return to the land of their subjects, they could still take revenge against the current inhabitants. It was in these early years of the Age of Witches that the Aznareth were born. This was an order of Khajarith warrior monks who bonded with enchanted weapons. The weapons themselves are in some stories even more ancient, being used to defend Chimeir back during the Age of Demons, being crafted by very powerful witches if not the first children themselves. Aznar knights took the fight to the demons attacking Khajar. At this, they were very successful, vanquishing many greater demons. The remains of some of their opponents are displayed in Aznareth temples in the northern mountains of Khajar, though the assembly has yet to be granted visitation to these reliquaries. Back then, art shows them having more variety and a fairly bestial appearance, either through trophies taken from demons and killed animals, or as some have suggested, some heritage as skin changers. In modern times, the Aznareth have a fairly regimented uniform, with deep blues symbolizing the sacred night sky. There were many individually powerful witches attested to at this time. Shojin, Corpse Walker, was a witch king said to reside in the vast Siritic wetlands in what is now the Siritic capital of Manau. His story is documented in one of Chimeir's earliest epic poems, originally written in beautifully illustrated codices made shortly after his alleged demise. True to his name, this great necromancer became quite proficient at making Welkin-like. Rather than use his own magic to animate dead bodies, he took over the hereditary magic of Chimeirans to control the bodies of the dead. This meant he could control far more bodies than he would be able to if he were animating them directly on his own. Through this effort, he was able to make farmers and soldiers alike. Shojin is said to have cared deeply for the welfare of his living subjects, having his corpses do hard labor and defend their land so his citizens could explore the arts, become experts in craft, or lead easy lives of luxury. However, many of his citizens abhorred the bodies of their relatives being used in this way, and over time, many began to protest, which escalated to a revolution. Shojin resented their lack of gratitude, and after his daughter was nearly slain by the rebels, he commanded his Welkin-like to turn his entire nation into the living dead. Shojin's daughter used the magic he had given her as a warlock to vanquish her father. According to the poem, he was slain, but it is said in many Sirid that Shojin persists as a living corpse himself, his magic unwilling to die. Wilkin-like can occur anywhere in Chimeir, but they are most common in the Siritic wetlands, having helped the Sirid resist imperial conquest in many frontier towns, and throngs of walking corpses are often sighted by field expeditions. Reported sightings of Shojin himself are most common deep within the marsh, and while the Empire officially claims dominion over the entire wetlands, it must be said there is very little imperial presence outside Manau and a few coastal cities. Despite being hated in his time, some modern Sirid revere Shojin, and a growing cult anticipates his return, and for the subsequent violent liberation from their imperial oppressors. Most Khajar families are fairly recently established, though a few trace their ancestry to the age of witches. One such family is House Rock, among the most powerful and ancient families of northern Khajar. Their sigil is the Warhog, and shapeshifters who took the form of peccaries were among their nobility. Their founder, Kira the Cloven, was said to be a fierce warrior, shrewd diplomat, voracious cannibal, and mother of 100 sons. Though they no longer have such holdings, during the Age of Witches, House Rook held the entire northern quarter of the peninsula. The Kalin, or Children of the Sea, had their share of very powerful witches. The Kentarim have many legends of witches so powerful that they could control the weather. One of their witches, Uutua, the sculptor, could change the bodies of people she enchanted. It is said that at least some merfolk were changed by her, or at least that she helped facilitate their transformation from Chimeran to Calorim. She could also alter the bodies of humans, sometimes in simple ways like an alteration of sex, and other times in more extreme forms, such as the addition of gills or enhancing senses. U'utuya was a respected elder for much of the Age of Witches. The Picardians also have many famous witches and shapeshifters. Though their noteworthy individuals attested, they are best known for their magical families. The Panther clans may be recognizable as among the last skin changers within the Confederacy, but during the Age of Witches, dozens of clans were led by families of shapeshifter and witch. The Boar clan began as warrior witches with mastodon familiars. The extinct Shalefoot clan was a major clan in these years that could allegedly manipulate mud and stone with their minds, and the now minor Bat clan were ruled by a lineage of shapeshifters who could assume the form of giant bats or perhaps pterosaurs. And some say that the salmon folk of the Highlands are descended from shapeshifters of the still major Salmon clan. The Firebird clan are among the few with both witch and shapeshifter in their matriline, which they will attest is an exception to convention thanks to their patron being the great trickster spirit. Many noble families in Chimeir trace their heritage to the great and terrible witches, even if they no longer carry magic. Magic, be it in the long lives of Chimeirans, witches, or shapeshifters, are all matrilineal in their natural state. Therefore, in patrilineal societies like Khajar, magic is not retained in the family. Warlocks, or people given magic through ritual, are often patrilineal as their father's magic has a better chance of bonding. However, they must then do similar rituals to their own children, as they won't naturally inherit his magic. It has been theorized that Khajar's aversion to magic likely stems from their patrilineal system, as magic wouldn't reliably pass through their noble lines, but it's just as likely as having the most powerful and oppressive witch kings in their past was also influential in this hatred. The Age of Demons concluded with plague and war. The Age of Witches, however, didn't really have a clear ending. There was conflict and constant changing of borders throughout. Though there were times of peace and stability, it seems to have been few and far between. The Great Library tends to define this era as ending when the majority of noble families were no longer witches. Under this definition, the Third Age only lasted around 1,000 years, as by around 4000 BC most witch kings had either been violently deposed, or their lineages had lost the potency of their magic. The Telmid and Kadanath peoples are both generally patrilineal, so even though many ruling houses descended from witch lords, patrilineal inheritance of warlock magic tends to lose potency with each generation. Even among the long-lived Chimeirans, for whom generations are on a roughly 80-year cycle instead of 20, and some witches lived and ruled through the 1,000 years of the Third Age, magic depreciated over time. As the Telmid and Kadanath peoples are, between most imperial lands, Khajar and the Free States, a strong majority of total Chimeran populations, this means that after around 1,000 years, a majority of the ruling families only had the hereditary magic of all Chimeirans. Some families took to inbreeding, at least intermarrying with other witch families so their sons would have more natural and powerful magics, but this didn't last indefinitely. Inbreeding depression no doubt took its toll. As their power waned, it is said many witch lords turned to drawing magic from other witches and warlocks to supplement their own. To further this aim, they also consumed the hereditary magic of their mundane Chimeran subjects. This prompted further conflict not only between witch lords as they cannibalized one another in body and craft, but also revolution from the common folk many witch lords consumed. The matrilineal Picardian and Kaleen retained their witches, as the witch lines inherited both magic and status if these traits were split in patrilineal societies. But even with their natural inheritance, it seems witch and shapeshifter magic still loses potency over time. It has been theorized that this may have something to do with magic generally not liking to share a host. Chimeirans have hereditary magic that is specialized in keeping their host alive and healthy. Witch magic is far more powerful and aggressive, but it's also more expensive. The hereditary magic of Chimeirans already makes them eat at least twice as much as a human of similar fitness and lifestyle. Witch magic, especially strains as powerful as those mighty sorcerers of the Third Age, is extremely demanding. It's entirely possible that natural selection simply favors less powerful magic. There are other definitions of this era's conclusion, with some scholars instead defining it as ending with numerous powerful witch kings all falling ill to the same sickness, or perhaps a poison, both in Khadaan and Khajar circa 3450 BC. Others mark it with the death of the last mainland witch king, Lord Jaka of Imrit, a city on the border of the Sirdic wetlands, now in ruins. This would make the Third Age end closer to 2400 BC. Some even consider it to extend into the advent of the Mercantile Age, or the Fourth Age, circa 1200 BC. However, the period of time between 4000 and 1200 BC is often called the Dark Ages for a reason. While there are many accounts, both written and enchanted, in the commonly accepted millennium of the Age of Witches, reliable accounts in these years are few and far between. There were fierce demons, powerful witches, and mighty heroes in these centuries of the Dark Ages, which is why some prefer to call these years the Age of Heroes. But to the Great Library, it lacks sufficient diagnostic events and cultures or technological developments to be considered an age. Through the Dark Ages, there were very few large empires or civilizations, and none lasted for long. For the most part, the known world was comprised of hundreds or thousands of small independent clans and factions. It would not be until the Mercantile Age from around 1200 BC to the 1300s AD that you begin to see empires or even large kingdoms, and when it was the age of consolidation between the 12th century on that the modern nations began to take form. As mentioned previously, there are still powerful witches in the known world. The Kalin, Serid, and Picardian have many witches in their midst, some of whom are thousands of years old, with a few even potentially having lived during the Age of Witches, if the stories are to be believed. Chimeirans who live beyond the known world, be it on islands or mainland Arvel and Nikar, often have witches as their clan leaders, or at least village elders. There are a few witches in the Khajar Republic, Chakati Empire, or the Free States, but these are closely watched, often feared, and tend to live on the fringes of society or in the wilderness, and are often restricted to healing or other helpful and non-threatening craft. The Assembly, being a society of predominantly enchanted humans, with many powerful witches in their midst, is one of the many sources of contention between them and Chimeran factions. A notable exception to the trend of powerful witches being ostracized by mainland Chimeirans is, of course, the Chakati Emperor. Though a majority of the Crescent is populated by the Telmeid peoples, the royal family and much of the ruling caste are prairie nomads from the north. Oni is their name for the sun and for their emperor, who is said to be an avatar of this celestial body. This magic appears to be a singular entity rather than magic that spreads down a lineage and bonds with the emperor and affords them a holy mandate to rule. Though there are many witches who wield fire and light, Oni is a pyromancer without peer. The emperor is said to be the most powerful witch in Chimeir, though this, of course, is difficult to verify. Cheers to David for sponsoring this series. As certain aspects of the historical eras of Chimeir's history will play a major role in the plot of the main series, I was a bit hesitant to do these episodes in years past, but presenting it as what the Assembly and average Chimeran knows about the history through folklore and archaeology, allows me to explore them without spoiling major plot points. Now, I've set the stage, as characters at the start of the series will understand major events and factions. Also, David is himself a fellow world builder and author. His channel, David's Writing Desk, has a lot of interesting and engaging episodes, including studies of fauna and the cultures of his fictional setting, Kaie. Definitely recommend you go check it out. Thanks again to David, to my Patreon patrons for your support, and thank you for watching. Cheers, folks!